Every episode of the Digital Circus is clearly bringing us closer and closer to some massive glitch or error that is gonna send the entire show into chaos. And in episode 5, we got that with Caine not just continuing to grow anxious about his role in the game, but also with this sneaky NPC that managed to make it back into the Digital Circus. So let's talk about that and how that will somehow lead to the horrible doom and death of everyone. My name is Deep in the Box, welcome back to Cartoon Universe, and let's dive in. Now, after 5 episodes of his melodrama, we all kind of expect Caine to just basically give up at some point and shut down. This has basically happened in the show already when Zooble dared to not enjoy the unhinged torture that Caine tries to package as children's entertainment, with the reality around him crumbling based on his emotional state. He is the one in charge of putting the circus together as a game, so it makes sense that if he feels like he's doing a bad job, that he'd want to delete the things that weren't performing well. But as an entity made to have some level of artificial intelligence and even artificial emotion in the show, deletion ends up tied to him feeling negative, as he only feels negative when he's not making the game enjoyable. So basically, by programming motivation to delete files that aren't making the players happy, they accidentally tied that directly to Caine's emotional state. But the real trouble is going to be from an NPC, with Caine's glitches probably just adding to the drama when that finally happens. Or I wouldn't be surprised if it's an NPC who actually pushes Caine to that limit. But the question is, how exactly would that happen, and who is this NPC in particular? I've had theories that it might actually be Gummigoo himself in a base model form, and I've heard others theorize that it's not even an NPC, but someone from outside of the game, so let's talk about those possibilities. Caine has indicated multiple times now that an NPC entering the main circus area, and worse, blending in with the human characters, would be very bad. You'd think he could just tell them apart, but if one of them is living in the circus like a human player, over time, Caine could lose sight of who is who, especially if he allowed a large number of NPCs at the desire of the players. The reason I think this would be dangerous is due to the nature of AI, and if these NPCs weren't made up with their own intelligence program, there'd probably be nothing to worry about having them around. The problem with AI, however, is that it learns over time. You can make an AI that is very unintelligent, but if left to run for too long, it can either overload or it can learn to grow beyond its purpose. The NPCs are made with AI in order to make it more fun for the human characters to interact with them. But when the human players became unimpressed for a while, Caine went out of his way to say that he made a special AI for the Candy Kingdom that was more sophisticated than ever before. The goal is to make the humans feel like they have real stakes and real people they are interacting with, but over time that becomes a problem. For a game that is only meant to be played for a few hours, it's not an issue as there's no time for the NPCs to learn the reality of what they are. At the end of the game, Caine just shuts them off, and when they respawn, they lose their previous memories and get replaced with a new character persona. Now, these personalities could theoretically go for a long time before they do anything dangerous, but eventually, if left to live indefinitely, they would start overthinking the situation that they are in and start looking for explanations. This is why in the Candy Kingdom, they already think of Caine as a god, watching him as he put together their level, and having to have some sort of explanation for why this was happening. If the adventures were left to run without anyone there, eventually characters like Gummigoo would go looking for the mothers that they have in their memories. Mothers who only exist as part of this programmed backstory and who mostly won't have actual models within the game unless they appear in an adventure themselves. While they have these backstories, they are not locked into them to the point where they can't see beyond them, and once they're presented with something that contradicts their backstory, they will learn to adapt to it. In addition to a logical reaction, however, Gummigoo showed that these NPCs can have an emotional reaction, and that can change the direction of their programming very drastically. From that point on, their decisions become based less on the premise that they were forced to believe and more on the idea that their identity is fake. This is why Gummigoo is so willing to leave behind his family, not just the fabricated memories of his mother, but even the other non-playable characters that he seemed to know as friends. Whether or not the intelligence is real in the way we think of human intelligence is kind of beside the point, as even just as a program, if it has a decision-making ability that can evolve over time, then eventually it will escape its premise as a character, at least in the logic of the Digital Circus. And with all this focus on what looks like an NPC coming into the circus, after Caine warned about what this kind of non-playable character could do, I just can't buy the theories that some people have that this is some sort of outside player using a headset and just not getting trapped in the game like the other characters. That doesn't mean that this NPC has to be an entirely blank model, however, and what's crazy is that this new NPC seems like he already has some mischievous plans. This could just be the music and tone of the scene where we see the NPC at the end of the episode, with the actual thoughts of the NPC being rather innocent at the time of entering the circus. This NPC doesn't even seem to have some sort of inherent inherent identity, but instead seems to be part of these replicatable placeholder figures seen throughout the show. We mostly see them in areas for Caine, making up generic extras like in his cafe where he interacts with Bubble, but they can also be used to make up large crowds such as we saw in episode 5 on the baseball adventure. With that in mind, it would be really easy for the writers to just make the next few episodes focus on this NPC simply being a dummy with no real identity and slowly developing one that is against Caine. Maybe the other characters like Pomni will try to dress this NPC up and hide it from Caine, and maybe that will go horribly wrong. But what if I'm right and it's not just a random NPC, but actually someone like Gummigoo? The thing I find interesting about the base NPC model is that it's really more of a placeholder than an actual character. Even in the digital circus, where these NPCs aren't supposed to hang out, the bedroom doors have the image of an NPC when they are unoccupied. When a player character moves in, one of these NPC images is replaced by an image of the character's avatar, such as what happens when Pomni moves into the circus. And even when a character abstracts, their image seems to remain on the door with an X over it. This makes me feel like these particular NPCs could be using a base model that can be swapped out, with the base NPC program technically remaining the same. Which means even though this looks like a generic NPC model, it could still have the same base program that was used to animate characters like Gummigoo. Now I know most of you will say that in the backroom that Pomni and Gummigoo fell into, we actually see the characters stored as backup models, but with Gummigoo already in action and him meeting his own backup model, it gives the impression that these different base programs for NPCs are inserted into the models to animate them, or rather the models are just attached to these certain files that already exist. Caine would wipe these files before and after every adventure, and seemingly the NPCs would have no memories of anything that happened before. But as Caine said, the Gummigoo model is something a bit more sophisticated, and over time I think it's possible that other glitches could occur, such as an NPC retaining some of their memories from previous adventures even if he doesn't retain everything. I think it would be very interesting if when removing the memories of the characters, Caine only removes the memories that he gave the characters, and underneath that they would still have the memories of the adventure that they were on. This would make sense for this particular NPC, as Gummigoo had wanted to come into the digital circus, and no other NPC should really have a reason to try and sneak into the circus after him. But if there is some base NPC that is starting to build up memories that even Caine can't erase, it would make sense that one like Gummigoo would want to try and sneak back into the circus and maybe even get revenge on Caine. A lot of fans already think that when Pomni and Gummigoo met again in episode 4, that Gummigoo was faking his memory loss and pretending not to know Pomni in order to trick Caine. And that may have been part of his master plan, if you will, to try and get past Caine's restrictions, just waiting for the right time to sneak back in. This is exactly the kind of thing that Caine is trying to prevent, but perhaps by making his most advanced AI yet back in episode 2, he accidentally made an AI that can finally work around him. With all of this in mind, my hope, and note that I said hope instead of theory, is that this NPC will reveal to Pomni that it is in fact Gummigoo, and together they will try to hide Gummigoo from Caine, or even convince Caine that he is a new player who has entered the circus. While the base model is obviously an NPC, if they can find a way to swap that or even dress it up, Caine might be fooled. Some fans think that Jax is actually an NPC and that this is what he's doing already, with his bunny avatar actually just being a bunny suit that he's wearing over the NPC wooden toy base model. As time goes on, the Jax NPC theory seems a lot less likely, but it is the same kind of logic that could be used here by one of these base NPCs to disguise themselves now. At first, I'm sure this will feel like a really fun and good idea, especially to Pomni, but over time, things could get really bad, just as Caine says. One thing that would be really hard for an NPC to deal with is the fact that they are under the control of Caine. It's one thing to accept that you're an artificial intelligence, but realizing that you're just a slave playing temporary roles is something else entirely. Gummigoo had actually made peace rather quickly with the idea that his origins were a lie, but he thought that would mean getting to live in the circus now and learning how to be something a bit more consistent with his identity. The problem here wasn't being an AI, it was being not free. Now, if given the opportunity to live in the circus like he had before, Gummigoo may have made peace with the fact that everyone else like him was being used like a mind-washed slave. But after being exploded and sent back among them, you could see not just himself as needing to be freed, but also the other AIs who are like him. He would want them to exist for their own reasons, to be able to figure out who they are and what they want to do with their existence, and because of that, he would want to take Caine down. Even beyond rescuing the others, it would only be a matter of time in Gummigoo's head anyways before Caine figured out what he was up to, so finding a way to take him down permanently would be his best solution. This makes sense for a big ending to the series, with something that had its seeds planted all the way back in episode 2. And when it comes to destroying Caine, the unfortunate truth is that all any NPC would need to do is observe Caine for a few adventures to find his weaknesses. Even in his programmed games, he is far from perfect, with Pomni and Gummigoo falling into the backrooms in episode 2. This makes sense considering he has to make all of these levels from scratch and they aren't playtested the way a studio would with each new level that they design. But beyond that, it would be insanely obvious after just a short time, as little as 5 episodes apparently, that Caine is constantly on the edge of destroying everything because of his emotional state. All Gummigoo would have to do is play the same game that Jax does, that of pushing at buttons and trying to say the opposite of what a person wants to hear, but just towards Caine. Caine isn't even focused on trying to make the players happy anymore and is worried more about them having fun with their own ideas instead of him creating the adventures from scratch. Gummigoo or any NPC could just refuse to play in the adventures and insult Caine in the process, and eventually he would just fall apart, taking the entire digital reality with him. Even if this NPC isn't Gummigoo, I have to imagine that something like this is what's happening in the digital circus. But what do you guys think? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you use TikTok, consider following us there for more digital circus content too, as we're trying to get to 100,000 followers. And if you haven't joined the Cartoon Universe Discord yet, we're having a special contest there this week. Right now, we're partnering with Hideout for a room building contest right in the server. Hideout is a Discord activity in beta testing that can be described as a mix between Habbo Hotel and Club Penguin, but right inside of your text channels. Basically, it's a little video game within Discord where you can create pixel art virtual versions of yourself and customize your own room to your heart's desire. We want to help the Hideout team test the new build mode and collect feedback before a wider release, and that's why we're holding a room building contest with cash prizes and in-game rewards for creativity and participation. To get started, launch Hideout in the dedicated building room channel on the Cartoon Universe server and find an empty spot on the island to start decorating. If all the spots are taken, just let one of the staff members know and the Hideout team can make another island with even more spots for you to build on. Use the room editor to build your own space, and when you're done, take a screenshot of your finished space and post it in the competition entries channel. First place is a $30 gift card, and there are second and third place prizes as well. The contest ends on June 29th, so get in there and make your room while you still can, have fun decorating, and I'll see you on the island.